9 years old when I decided I was fat. I had walked to school that day, my cumbersome backpack swinging to the bottom of my knees, almost bigger than my barely 3 feet tall and tiny stature. I had looked down at my thighs that had begun to develop through both genetic predisposition and hours spent on the ice, where I made this executive decision in that moment that my legs were fat. So I must have been fat too. I grew up on the ice as a figure skater, with hopes and dreams of going to the Olympics to be just like my hero, Christy Yamaguchi. Figure skating ultimately made me into the person I am today. It undoubtedly made me a better person. It taught me the value of work ethic, gave me qualities in my arsenal like resilience, tenacity, grit. And without sounding too cliche, the power of getting up after I fall, time and time again. Figure skating gave me the confidence to not be intimidated by large crowds or being the center of attention. But above all else, figure skating was this ultimate proof to myself that I can do whatever I put my mind to, no matter how big or small the goal is. However, there is a dark side to the sport. There's an elephant in the room. There's this underlying standard when it comes to our bodies as skaters and athletes. There's this core belief system that haunts all of us. And that's the smaller we are, the better. The amount of pressure that we face to obtain this body standard is insurmountable. And most of us skaters, not all of us, have felt it in one way or another. So don't get me wrong here, there's physics involved. The smaller a skater is, the faster they can rotate in the air. The faster a skater can rotate in the air, the more rotations they can complete in a single jump. The more rotations a skater can complete in a single jump, the higher the technical score has the potential of being. So while the physics of the sport can loom over a skater's head, the aesthetic nature also adds to the pressure. Long lines and slender figures give way to more grace and fluidity, and oftentimes the perception of a skater can be greater if they have this ideal body type. Take into account, figure skating is judged, it is subjective, and we are at the whim of conformity in order to reach better scores. The problem with this thinking is not all bodies or skaters are created equal. For instance, I have an athletic body type. I build muscle very easily, and I stand at a short 5'1" without heels. I'm not long and lean. I'm an athlete with a muscular body. So as my body began to develop through puberty, I started to acquire this muscle mass. I started to reject this body I was gifted with from such an early age. Well, my struggles were exacerbated until I was in my late 20s. From this age at 9 years old, I began to manipulate my body to fit this standard. Enter my eating disorder. In the beginning stages, I did things like Google how to lose muscle mass, where I had learned to restrict my calories and carbs to a dangerously low number. So my body had finished eating off the fat stores, where it started fueling off of my muscle. It worked. Within months, I had shrunk to a much smaller frame. I felt great at the time. I was safe because I was in control. I was getting positive reinforcement from left and right about how great my body looked. You're in such good shape, Amanda. The problem is, I began to associate my shrinking body with that of peak performance. My story is not special. Other skaters share similar stories. A lot of them I witnessed. At one point, I was trained with a skater who eventually went on to skate in the Olympics. She was 11 or 12 at the time. She was talking with her coach about the size of her thighs. They both indulged on their shared insecurity, where they exchanged secrets on ignoring hunger cues and restrictive diets. This was an adult, an authority figure, talking to a child who should have been setting an example. A few years prior to that, I was skating with another Olympian, who I was in awe at the first sight of her. I wasn't just marveling at her skating, but how skinny she was. Goals, my training partner and I said to each other at our first sight of her. This idea of smaller bodies being superior is ingrained into figure skating's culture. But this idea or thinking isn't specific to figure skating. Other sports harbor this mentality as well. In the National Library of Medicine, a study posted states that participants in aesthetically centered sports such as gymnastics, diving, ballet, and figure skating all show a higher prevalence of eating disorders than that of the general population. At the height of my skating career, I had shrunk to a dangerously low weight where I began to suffer the consequences of a long-term body in starvation. I had amenorrhea, the loss of a menstrual cycle, crippling fatigue, anxiety, depression, obsessive thinking, isolation from loved ones, digestive issues, skin problems, hormonal imbalances. The list goes on. So oftentimes I find that in those moments of weakness, our low points, we're forced to ask pivotal questions. My question changed my life. Is it worth living like this any longer? From that deep existential question came an equally essential answer. No, I cannot live like this any longer. So, I embarked on one of the hardest paths that I have walked in this short and sweet life, and that is that of recovery. When I first reached out for help, I was told that it would get worse before it gets better. It's encouraging, right? But it was the truth. It did get worse before it got better. Eating disorder recovery means that there's a lot of trudging through mud. However, things do eventually improve. The hard part about recovery is there's not one magic pill, there's not one cure-all for eating disorder. Eating disorder recovery is nuanced, and it takes many different angles and approaches in order to make progress. So, I began to heal my relationship with food in my body. I began to move and eat more intuitively. I healed trauma. I learned how to process difficult emotions. And from this place of progress, a new way of thinking began to emerge. As we know, our minds are powerful. And positive thinking, as it relates to our bodies, is equally powerful. My own positive thinking meant that I had begun to change my thinking about my body, taking worth from what it looks like, and beginning to hold reverence for what my body can do. This has been the biggest tool and catalyst for my recovery that I've reached for, and I continue to reach for in days that I still struggle. Our bodies are capable of so many amazing things. They digest food and convert it to fuel. They carry us from point A to point B. My body can hike to the tops of mountains, can run in the sand, it can endure difficult yoga practices, it can surf epic waves. My body rests, it recovers, it heals. It's a miracle. You know, back when I was skating, I used to throw myself into the air on a few centimeter thick foot knife, where I would then rotate a few times and then land on one leg on the same few centimeter thick blade on top of a slippery surface. If that's not remarkable, I don't know what is. Often, I wish I would have thought about my body and all the amazing things that it's capable of. But the good news is, I get to now. So as my own thinking has begun to shift, my life has changed along with it. So without sounding corny, maybe we can all take a few minutes a day and say thank you to our bodies for all that they do for us. It's not going to cure an eating disorder. It's not going to fix all your insecurities or body image issues. But I can tell you from experience it is the best place to start. Thank you.